What's up everyone, it's Frank from AM Ramen, and today we're in the Waseda area of Tokyo. We're going to be diving into Waseda Ramen shops. This is an area with a lot of high-level ramen, and it's really a mix. We've got a lot of heavy-hitting ramen to satisfy college students here, but also some very refined, award-winning ramen as well. From deliciously unique maguro or dried tuna-based ramen to filling and heavier soupless ramen, let's dive into the Waseda ramen scene starting now.
For those new to the channel, AM Ramen is all things ramen, bringing you firsthand the very best ramen info from Japan. I'm Frank, I grew up here and can happily claim that I eat ramen for a living. Today we're in Tokyo's Waseda neighborhood, home to Waseda University. Waseda is in Shinjuku City in Tokyo. I personally like this area. It's relatively quiet and laid back. And of course, where there are university students, there are ramen restaurants. And Waseda has some of the best ramen restaurants in Tokyo.
Alrighty, making my way to the first ramen shop of the day, which is Gantetsu. Now this is one of the top ramen restaurants in Tokyo, not just in Waseda. And what they do is quite unique. They use dried tuna or maguro, and they get this tuna directly from Tsukiji. That's the biggest fish market here in Tokyo, the famous one where they have the auctions and so forth. But the broth is not just tuna. We've also got chicken and kelp there, very well balanced, I'm told, and quite delicate too. Looking forward to this lighter bowl to start the day.
I've just arrived at Gantetsu. The closest station is Waseda Station. Worry not, at Gantetsu, their ticket machine has English on it. You've got two types of shoyu or soy sauce ramen, an Osaka style too. Their shio or salt seasoned tuna ramen is this row, and that's what I'm grabbing. I added an egg as well. And here it is.
Okay, so just finished bowl number one at Gantetsu. And of course, it was delicious. It's very rare for a ramen shop actually to use the bones from maguro or tuna. So it had this very unique flavor. You kind of had the fattiness from the tuna there alongside the chicken. So there was this richness. The salt or shio seasoning that they used wasn't that salty, not that punchy. I'd say more on the delicate side of things. And what that did is really bring out the flavor coming from that tuna. So it was overall a very light and refreshing tasting soup, and a certain freshness too, I think, provided from the choice of toppings. They had green negi and also komatsuna. The topping though that stood out the most were definitely those chunks of maguro. Oh my god, they were so good. Basically, they're a little bit raw in the center, but on the outside, they're more cooked. So it was kind of like eating a sashimi, but also one that's been cooked a little bit. In addition to those tuna chunks, you also had a very generous slab of pork chashu. It had a nice smokiness to it. I'm not sure what they seasoned it with. I wolfed it down pretty quickly, but that was really good too. Last but not least, the egg was fantastic, very runny, and the noodles to round it out were basically thin. Pretty standard, I'd say, but they did a good job of soaking up the broth.
For reference, another great ramen shop that does a mean bowl of shio ramen relatively close by is Mennan Chitose. Shinjuku Station isn't too far away, but the closest station to them is Akebonobashi. It's a bit of a hike from Gantetsu, our first ramen shop, over 30 minutes, even if you're walking quickly. Chitose's signature shio or salt ramen is saltier than most, but has a fantastic chicken flavor that epically shines through. No chemical seasoning in the soup here too. You get a lot of green negi or spring onions, big blocks of sweetly flavored menma or bamboo shoots, and big pieces of chashu pork. The flat noodles are aromatic and made in-house from Hokkaido wheat flour. Anyways, moving on to our next ramen shop.
And now I'm on the way to ramen shop number 2, Yamaguchi. Instead of a shio or salt seasoning, we're gonna be jumping into a shoyu or soy sauce seasoning. This is one of the top soy sauce or shoyu ramen bowls in Tokyo. Now the soup here is 100% chicken bones. The owner, Yamaguchi-san, is known for changing the recipe, and in 2019, he switched up the chickens that he uses.
I hadn't visited since they did this, so I'm excited to dive in. And I've officially arrived at Yamaguchi. I'm grabbing their famous chicken ramen with an egg, of course. Here is my summary of this awesome bowl.
So as mentioned earlier, the soup is 100% chicken bones. You can smell those chickens as soon as you walk in the door. Now the chickens that he's using are aizu jidori and also date dori. Basically two types of chickens. The aizu one has more of a strong flavor, whereas the date chicken or date dori has a lighter flavor. So it was his idea that he blends these two together. to make a better soup. And let me tell you, they work beautifully together. The soup is very chicken rich, it has a syrupy-like quality to it, and of course, the chicken is very radiant in flavor. Now, the soy sauce seasoning has, of course, a tangy quality to it, but it's also quite bold, and I'd say a little bit on the sweeter side. With this slightly sweet chicken-based soup, it does remind me of some other high-level bowls of chicken ramen that you have here in Tokyo, and that's a good thing. Now, the noodles are relatively thin, a little bit flat, and they're actually made from 2 types of Hokkaido wheat flour, as well as 3 types of whole wheat flour, so 5 in total. I would say very delicate, and they do soak up that broth quite well. Now, there were 2 types of chashu pork. One was a little bit on the firmer side, one was on the softer side. And both of them, I believe, are actually from Spain. We're talking about the Galicia area. High-level chashu pork, and the egg was wonderfully high quality as well. If he's already going all in with the chickens, you would expect the same for the eggs, of course, maybe even coming from the same chickens. Overall, excellent bowl of soy sauce seasoned chicken ramen, 100% chicken ramen.
Another ramen shop that does delicious shoyu ramen is Juni Bunya. They're literally across the street from Yamaguchi. They have a big menu too, with their ramen showcasing different types of shoyu. This ramen uses a Kijimari shoyu, one that's been produced since 1853 by the Mizutani Group. The pork chashu floral pattern and pork back fat floating around makes this ramen look heavier than it is. It is salty, but it's relatively light, with a soup that's hamaguri clams, kelp, and chicken bones. This is a place where you could literally have a different bowl of ramen for every day of the week. Here's one more recommendation before we visit our last shop. Toshioka is the ramen restaurant. Be warned, as Toshioka has a cult-like following, and you will have to wait. They do both ramen and tsukemen, or dipping ramen. Here's the tsukemen. It's really good. Sweet, salty, and sour at the same time. The noodles are fat and made in-house. The menma, or bamboo shoots here, are very special. On the side, I recommend ordering their spicy condiment. It goes beautifully with the broth, which already is a little spicy to begin with. Alright, back to me on the ground.
Now for my last shop of the day, I'm going to be having Aburasoba, or soupless ramen. There are a ton of soupless ramen shops around the Waseda area. It's a filling dish with thick noodles, and it's also relatively affordable, so college kids love it. There are several shops, but I've handpicked one in particular, looking forward to diving in right now.
And the one that I've handpicked is Musashino Aburasoba. They have their standard soupless ramen, Aburasoba, and an even richer one, which includes pork back fat. Don't worry, the standard one more than gets the job done. It's got a fatty flavor as it is, coming from pork lard and garlic. Delicious, delicious.
Okay, just finished my 3rd and final bowl for the day at Musashino Aburasoba. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Waseda has a ton of Aburasoba, or soupless ramen restaurants. The thing about Aburasoba is that it is cheaper technically to set up a ramen shop because the soup is what actually costs a lot. Here you don't have soup, you have an oil, much less soup, think of it like that. So in that sense, you keep your costs low and you can also keep your prices low. And this in turn attracts a lot of college or university students. In this area, it's Waseda University. And when I walked in there, oh my God, it was all university students. I felt a little bit out of place, but it was a lot of fun. The inside was this wooden brown finish. It had a kind of funky Showa era vibe, and you can understand why it's popular. I got the regular portion of noodles, which is nami, but for the same price, you can actually get more noodles. Now, as to the flavor of the Aburasoba, it had a very strong soy sauce seasoning. Most of them are seasoned with soy sauce, but this one in particular, you could really taste that soy sauce. But it was also very lardy, really stuck to your lips. And of course, that pork lard really helps those thick noodles pick up that oil. For toppings, we had negi, or spring onions, and also kaiwara sprouts. And those two, they basically broke up some of that more intense flavor that we got from the pork lard and that strong soy sauce. But the fun thing about Aburasoba is that you can actually add vinegar, chili oil, which comes on the side, and also at this place, sansho numbing pepper. And it really made that Aburasoba come alive, arguably even more. I feel like it was even more delicious after that was added. So in summary, that place is very hearty, filling, delicious, and definitely affordable.
One more ramen shop that does superb soupless ramen is Tokyo Menchite Honpo. They have a couple branches, mostly in Tokyo, including 2 in Waseda. Here's the West Waseda or Nishi Waseda branch. Their Aburasoba or soupless ramen has a similar flavor, but it's less lardy. It's also got more of a salty soy sauce base. You get a lot of meat too, and on some days you can actually get extra meat for free. University kids in this area are definitely happy about that. Anyways, here's back to me on the ground.
Now let me know, from those ramen shops that we reviewed today, including the ones that were in between the 3 ramen shops I visited, let me know which one in Waseda you want to eat the most. Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video of the best Waseda ramen. And if that's the case, please hit that like button. This is Frank from 5 AM Ramen signing out and reminding you that Tokyo is the only city in the world where you can have fantastic ramen at 5 AM. Thanks for tuning in.